Okay, so day 2 of unit 3 is more graphing with parabolas, and last time it was about graphing in vertex form. This time is graphing in standard form. So what is standard form, you ask? It is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. So that's kind of the form that you've seen these quadratics in the previous unit, and you've seen this. Okay, if your a is greater than 0, aka it is a positive number. So if your a is positive, the graph opens up. So it'll be like a happy face parabola. And if a is less than 0, so it's going to be negative. If it's negative, then the graph opens down, and it'll be a sad face parabola. Okay, the axis of symmetry, there's a formula for it. It's x equals negative b over 2a. Okay, so and then this is going to make more sense later when we start doing it, but then you find that's the x coordinate of your vertex, is what your axis of symmetry was, so that's done. To figure out what the y coordinate is of your vertex, you substitute that number back in and solve for y. And then the y-intercept is always your c value, so you write it as 0 and then whatever the c is. Okay, so those are the 3 things that I have you find. I have you find the axis of symmetry, the vertex, and the y-intercept, and then you graph this stuff, and I'll show you how to do it. So I won't do this every time, but for this one, I'm going to go ahead and identify what the a is, b, and c. So the a is 1, your b is 2, and your c is 3 for this problem. Your axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2 times a. So in this case, it would be negative times 2 over 2 times 1. So that ends up being negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. And remember, you always write axis of symmetry, because it is a vertical line, as x equals negative 1. Okay, now to find the vertex, I didn't give myself a whole bunch of room, but that's okay. So to find the vertex, you're going to take this x value that we just found, and we're going to plug it in for the x's in the original equation. So this would be, y equals negative 1 squared in parentheses. You must have that in parentheses, and this exponent must be on the outside. Sometimes people mess that up. Plus 2 times negative 1 plus 3. Okay, and then stick that in your calculator. Okay, so if you want to do it by hand, you can, but otherwise just stick it in a calculator if you don't feel like it. So when you do that, you get your y value is 2. Okay, so remember, this is your vertex is going to be an ordered pair. So your first number is that x value that we found earlier. And then your second number is going to be that y value we just found. Okay, so that goes right there. All right, that's your vertex. And the last one is your y-intercept. So it's always 0, and then whatever your, actually I'm gonna box this, sorry. Okay, so that's your vertex. Your y-intercept is 0, and then whatever your c is. So in this case, it's 3. Okay, and so that's where I get that number from. And then now we're ready to graph it. That's all you need. So let's first graph our axis of symmetry. So that's a vertical line at negative 1. So I always dash my axis of symmetry. I've had students in class ask if they have to dash theirs, and the answer is no, but it kind of just looks nicer, and in textbooks and stuff, that's what you would see. Okay, so I've got my axis of symmetry drawn. Now let's graph my vertex. So it's at negative 1, 2, and it should always be on your axis of symmetry. And then your y-intercept is 3, so over 3 to the right side. Okay, I graphed those 3 things, but obviously I don't have enough for a parabola because it has to look like a U, so you need stuff on the left side. But since there is an axis of symmetry, right here, and we know this point, like the vertex is on the axis of symmetry, so there's not going to be a reflection of that. But this point, there will be a reflection, and it would be right here, because it's one away here, and so it'll be one away here. So I'm going to put a point there. Now I have 3 points. That's enough to make a rough sketch. Oops, sorry. So draw your parabola. Don't forget your arrows. Sorry, mine's really bad, but you get the idea. So, and that's how you graph a parabola in standard form. Let's do a few more. So here's this one. So we're gonna find our 3 things. The first thing is our axis of symmetry. So axis of symmetry. So it's x equals negative b over 2a, which would be negative times 2 over 2 times 1. So this would be negative 2 over 2, which is negative 1. So sweet, we've got the same one as last time. That's a coincidence. So x equals negative 1 is your axis of symmetry. Now let's find your vertex. So it's going to be negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 minus 5. Okay, and so that would stick that in your calculator and you get negative 6. So your vertex is going to be at negative 1 comma negative 6. Last thing, which is the easiest, is your y-intercept. And that's just going to be at 0 comma your c, which is negative 5. Okay, so graph your axis of symmetry. Okay, then graph your vertex. So negative 1, what was it? Negative 1, negative 6, that's way down here. And then your y-intercept is negative 5. So it will look, yeah, it's a little better. It will look something along those lines. Okay, next one we got to find our axis of symmetry. And it is negative b over 2a. So negative times 4 over 2 times negative 2. So that would be negative 4 over negative 4, which would be positive 1. So our axis of symmetry is at x equals 1. Okay, our vertex is going to be y equals negative 2 times 1 squared plus 4 times 1 minus 4. Okay, so whenever you do that, you get negative 2. So our vertex is at 1 comma negative 2. Last one is your y-intercept, and that would be at 0 comma negative 4. Graph all of that. So you have your y or your axis of symmetry at 1, your vertex at 1, negative 2, and then your y-intercept at negative 4, and then so you'll go the other side and it'll be at 2, negative 4. Okay, so if you notice, this is a sad face or a parabola that opens down, right? Which makes sense because remember I said at the very beginning of the video that if your a is negative, it's going to open down, and this a is negative, so therefore it opens down. So just something to be aware of. Okay, so now that you're feeling confident, I'm going to throw one more thing at you. So now what's different about this problem? Well, there's an inequality. Okay, it's not that much different, just one more little step. I guess kind of 1.5 steps. So let's talk about something before I forget. So this is a what kind of line? It'll be a dashed line. Okay, I'm not going to forget to write a dash. I always forget it and then I have to redraw it again. Okay, so then just solve everything like we have been doing. So let's find your axis of symmetry. Okay, so that's negative b over 2a. And notice I write the formula every time because I think you're more likely to memorize it whenever you write it over and over again. So this is kind of a fun one. So it's negative times negative 12 over 2 times negative 6. Okay, so on top that gives me positive 12. On bottom gives me negative 12. Okay, all right, simplify that. 12 divided by negative 12 is negative 1. So my axis of symmetry is negative 1. Okay, the vertex is going to be, so if you want to, don't worry about the inequality. It's not really going to mess anything up. I'm just going to put an equal sign to figure out what the y-coordinate is of the vertex. Doesn't matter. So it's going to be negative 6 times negative 1 squared minus 12 times negative 1 minus 1. And that gives me 5. So my vertex is at negative 1 comma 5. Okay, and then my y-intercept is going to be 0 comma negative 1. Okay, before we graph this real fast, is it going to be a happy or a sad parabola? Look what the A is. The A is negative, so it's going to be an upside down sad parabola. And then don't forget to draw the dashed line whenever you're graphing this stuff. So the axis of symmetry is still at negative 1. It's a popular one today. Okay, your vertex is at negative 1, 5. Then your y-intercept is at 0, negative 1, way down there. Okay, so it looks like this will be a sad parabola. That's good. So it will look something along these lines. Okay. Oh, see, I told you I was going to forget it. It's a dashed line. Sorry. Sorry. This is being a little crazy. Okay, so it's a dashed line. I always forget it, and then, like I said, I have to redraw it. So dashed line. Now we have to pick a test point, and it's kind of hard to see, but you can pick 0, 0 on this one because it's not on there. It's not actually on the line. How I drew it, it looks like it is, but it's actually not. This line kind of goes more like, oh, see there, I'm drawing it again. It gets really close, but it doesn't actually hit 0, 0 because we know where y is 0, it's negative 1. Okay, so on this one, you can pick 0, 0 as your test point. So I'm going to pick 0, 0 and plug it into the original equation. So 0 is less than negative 6 times 0 squared minus 12 times 0 minus 1. So those first two terms are just 0. So I have 0 minus 1, which is negative 1. So is 0 less than negative 1? The answer is no. So since that test point is on the outside of the line, we need to shade on the inside. Or outside of the parabola, we need to shade inside the parabola. Okay, so there we go. Now the problem's done. Now let's go on to the next one. This one is another inequality, same thing, but this time it is a solid line. Okay, so find your axis of symmetry. And it would be negative b over 2a, so negative times 6 over 2 times 3, which would be negative 6 over 6, which is negative 1. So we have x equals negative 1 again, for like the 5th time in this video, it feels like. Okay, then find our vertex. So y equals 3 times negative 1 squared plus 6 times negative 1 minus 2. And that gives you negative 5. Okay, so our vertex would be at negative 1 comma negative 5. Then the last thing is to find your y-intercept. So that would be at 0, negative 2. Plot all of it. Your axis of symmetry at our favorite, negative 1. Your vertex, negative 1, negative 5. And then your y-intercept is at -2. Okay, so draw and connect it. All right, and it was a solid line. Okay, so I do have to shade, remember, and let's pick our favorite test point, 0, 0. So is 0 greater than or equal to 3 times 0 squared plus 6 times 0 minus 12? So is 0 greater than or equal to -2? Yes, it is. So then we shade like that. Okay. So now here's the next part. So we're gonna take a break from graphing for a second. So if you like to graph in standard form always, I'm going to teach you how to convert from vertex form to standard form. Okay, and then vice versa. So this is the easiest one. Or easier, I should say. This is already in vertex form. So remember, vertex form is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Okay, so that's in that form. So we need to get it into standard form, which I said at the beginning of the video is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so what do you notice? Well, if we're going to convert it to standard form, we cannot have any parentheses. So how do we do that? I'll show you. So we're going to have y equals, and since that x minus 2 is being squared, the whole thing is being squared, we're going to have to do x minus 1, or I said x minus 2, x minus 1 times x minus 1 plus 4. Okay, because that's kind of expanded form. So now let's just distribute. So x times x is x squared. X times -1 is -1x, or you could just write -x, doesn't matter. -1 times x is -x. -1 times -1 is +1. All right, don't forget about everything else. I'm going to drop down the y, the equal sign, and the +4. So even though we got rid of the parentheses, we still need to clean it up a little bit, which no big deal. We just need to combine the like terms. So we have our x's and our constants that we need to combine. So this would be y equals x squared minus 2x plus 5. Is it in standard form? Does it look like that up there? Yes, it does. So you are finished. Okay, one more of these. And this one has a little bit, one more step, but that's okay. So if you notice on this one, this has a number out front too. And I'm going to show you what to do with that, but don't forget about it because it is important and it plays a role into it. So let's first write it out in expanded form. So it's going to be y equals 2 times x plus 3 times x plus 3 minus 5. Okay, so that's what that is in expanded form. So now I am going to drop everything down except for the stuff I'm about to distribute. So I'm going to do y equals 2. I still am going to need to distribute that 2 in, but I need to FOIL that out in the middle first. And then I'll also drop down the minus 5 so I don't forget about it. Okay, so we're going to do x times x, and that gives me x squared. X times 3 is positive 3x. Then do 3 times x, which is 3x, and 3 times 3, which is 9. Okay, so I could distribute that too, and if I wanted to, but personal preference, I'm going to combine my like terms first in the middle just to kind of have less to do. So this will be 2 times x squared plus, when you add those together, you get 6x plus 9 minus 5. Okay, distribute that 2 in. So 2 times, and we're not distributing it to the -5, just the stuff in the parentheses. So this would end up being 2x squared. 2 times positive 6x would be positive 12x. 2 times 9 would be positive 18. And then drop everything else down. Okay, we're really close. We don't have any parentheses anymore, but we do need to combine like terms there on the end. And so we're going to have y equals 2x squared plus 12x, and that would be plus my lucky number 13. And now it's in standard form. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about in this video. I know it's a long video, I'm sorry. So I'm going to teach you how to go from standard form now to vertex form. So let's recap on vertex form. It's y equals a parentheses x minus h parentheses squared plus k. Okay, so, and if you notice, and if you remember from the last video, h comma k, that's going to be your vertex. Okay. Another thing to note is notice there is a minus sign in this formula. That will play a role here in the future. Okay, so first let's write down the steps. So one is you identify the A and don't change it at all. How can I say that better? We'll say and leave it. Okay, so just leave it alone. Step 2 is to find your vertex. And step 3 is to plug into vertex form. So whenever you find your A, you're going to plug that. So whatever the A is on step 1, it will be the first number out front. Okay? All right, let's do one. So let's first identify what is the A on this one. Well, the A is just 1. Okay, so then we have to find the vertex. Well, do you remember how to find the vertex? First, you have to find the axis of symmetry. So your x-coordinate is going to be negative b over 2a, just like it was earlier in the video. So that will be negative times 4 over 2 times 1, which is negative 4 over 2, which will give me negative 2. Okay, there's my x-coordinate of my vertex. How do you find your y-coordinate? Okay, it is, you plug that back in, so let's do that. It'd be negative 2 squared, this is your y value, plus 4 times negative 2 minus 5, and I believe you get negative 9. So now our vertex is negative 2, negative 9. Okay, so here's where it gets a little tricky, and remember in your vertex, this is the h and this is the k. That's how they did it because they couldn't use x and y again because it's already in the problem. So you identified the a, we leave it, so it'll be y equals 1 parentheses, and the formula, if you notice, is x minus h, so we're going to have to do that. X minus, and our h is negative 2. And then close your parentheses and don't forget the exponent. And then your k is, so it's plus k, so plus, and your k is negative 9. Okay, that's a little gross, so let's clean it up, the last step. So the one out front, you can write it if you want to, but I'm not going to because it doesn't do anything, and I'm just going to drop it. You'll see it dropped most of the time. So it'll be nothing, and this will be x minus negative 2 would become plus 2 squared, and then we have our minus 9. Okay, let's do another one. So we identify the A. Your A is 1. Find your y-intercept, your vertex, negative b over 2a. So that would be negative times 10 over 2 times 1, which would be negative 10 over 2, so your x is negative 5. Plug that back in. We would have, for your y, would be negative 5 squared plus 10 times negative 5 plus 16. And I'm definitely using a calculator on this one. You get negative 9. Okay. So we have our vertex, and we have our vertex is negative 5, negative 9. So that's our h, that's our k. Let's plug it all in. It'll be y equals 1 parentheses x minus negative 5 squared plus negative 9. Okay, clean it up. It becomes y equals, I'm dropping the 1, x plus 5 squared minus 9. Okay, I'm only going to do one more, but this time I'm going to throw in, if your notes have a 2 in it, great. If they don't, add a 2 right there in front of that x squared. So, because I just wanted you to have one where the a is not 1. So your a is 2 on this one. So it's, let's find the x. X is x equals negative b over 2a. So it'll be negative times negative 4 over 2 times 2. So that would be positive 4 over 4, which is just 1. All right, let's find our y value. That's 2 times 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 13. I believe you get 11. So we have our a, we have our vertex as 1, 11, so let's plug it in. So we're going to have y equals a is 2, so 2 parentheses x minus 1 parentheses squared plus 11. Okay, and that is it. That's in vertex form. All right, go ahead and do that other one for practice, but I'm not going to do it in the video because I'm saving time. It's already too long. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for watching.